Sometimes we have to teach people a lesson in their lives which they will never forget. Today on rLounge, lessons in life will be repeated until they are learned. Up first, an old woman with grape envy. We're picking all the grapes. My parents rent a house on a 1/4 acre of land. The land with rows of grapes is not being rented to my parents, but the landlord lets us pick them and juice them every year. The only access to the grapes is through the land my parents rent. Before my parents moved in, this old lady, Maureen, used to pick the grapes with her family and juice them. As a side note, Maureen has her own grapes, but she likes to use our landlord's grapes too because previous tenants did not. Every effing year, it's a battle to make Maureen wait to pick grapes so we can pick a share. The landlord has been clear that we get first dibs on the grapes because we're his actual tenants. We always leave her at least a row, one of 4. Every year, she tries to be a sneaky little witch and get the grapes, but this year was the worst. My mom told Maureen that she was going to pick the grapes this weekend. Well, this weekend came and went without being able to pick the grapes. My mother's helper crew got sick. My dad was recovering from major surgery, and she couldn't find the time or energy. Maureen's crotchety old butt calls to inform my mom that she is coming tomorrow to pick all the grapes we didn't. My mom asked her to please wait a few more days as her husband, my dad, has cancer and her helpers were sick. Maureen's response? "That's too bad. You had your chance. My family's coming tomorrow and we are picking the grapes." Of course, my poor mom loses it at this point and begins screaming, "Shame on you, Maureen. You call yourself a Christian?" Maureen continues telling her she had her chance. So my mom came in and told me this story. I said, "Absolutely effing not. We are staying up as late as needed to pick every single grape off the vines. Every single one." We both called as many friends as we could. The troops are being gathered. We now have about 10 people to help us pick the grapes. We will pick every single grape so that when stupid Maureen and her stupid family show up, there will be not one little fruit left on the vine. All-nighter for the grapes. Edit. Grammar. Update. Oh my god, wow. Okay, well, I love how many of you would help pick grapes. It makes me feel bad about the fact that the update isn't super satisfying. Maureen called my mom last night, an hour or so into picking, to apologize and said we could have all the grapes. My mom, being a much better person than I am, told her she can still have a row or two because we didn't need all the grapes. But Maureen kept saying no and that she won't come by at all. Ironically, it almost sounded like she was throwing a fit about it. Like, which we're still being nice and letting you come. So we did pick grapes, but not everything. We still hate Maureen. Apparently, she's 92 and she believes she will live forever because of her homemade grape juice. So that's one reason she's so crazy about this whole thing. Maybe she will live forever, but that wouldn't be unfortunate because she's an a-hole. The community has some reactions. ZorB1 says, "Not sure why you can't tell Maureen she no longer has access via the land you're renting. Lock the gate or something." The OP responds, "We did actually. She said she would just go through the holes in the fence on the landlord's side." Meh. Honestly, I'm not surprised that she was like this because she's an old lady stuck in her ways. Clearly she thinks she's entitled to these grapes. It's unfortunate that you can't do too much about her because it's technically not your land. You're just tenants, but Maureen should know better too, since she's actually not a tenant. She probably just wants to get in as many grapes as she can before she croaks. What do you think of good old crotchety Maureen? Would you have been as kind as OP's mother? Let us know your thoughts below. Meanwhile, next up, a pizza party. I have to pay to print personal stuff at work? So do you, boss. Many years ago, I worked for an organization providing frontline customer service. It was a decent place to work, but our manager had lots of rules. One of the rules was that we could not do any personal printing with the printers at work. If we did, we were expected to pay 50 cents per page for black and white printing and $1 per page for color. I'm not sure who made this rule, but the manager was constantly reminding us. Our desks were not assigned, meaning any day you could be sitting at any desk, depending on your assigned tasks for the day. One day, I was interviewing for another job within the organization, but at another location. Prior to the interview, the manager of the location asked me if I'd mind printing a copy of my resume and bringing it with me as their printers were down for the day. I said no problem and figured I'd print it at work since it was work-related. I was sitting at a desk that did not have a printer at it. The closest printer was located between my manager's desk and an employee desk. So I printed it and stood up to get it. Before I go to the printer, my manager got there first. My print job was ahead of hers. When she saw what I had printed, she said, "OP, this looks like a personal print job." I explained it wasn't, but she disagreed and said since I had nothing to do with our day-to-day work, I had to pay $2 for 4 black and white pages. I begrudgingly paid up. I asked her what happened to the money, and she said she always put it in the Christmas party fund. All right. A few weeks later, I was sitting at the desk with the printer at it. It was lunchtime, and everyone except my manager agreed to go to a nearby restaurant for lunch. I had walked out our building and realized I forgot my wallet, so I quickly ran back in to get it. When I got at my desk, I could hear the printer going. I was curious what was being printed as it was spitting out page after page. I quickly glanced at the pile and saw at least 100 pages printed in color, announcing a Sweet 16 for Trista, our manager's daughter. It very obviously belonged to my manager. My manager came out of the bathroom a moment later and seemed shocked to see me standing there. I picked up the pile and passed it to her and told her our Christmas party fund was going to be getting a big boost. She said nothing but looked really uncomfortable. A few weeks later, our district manager made his quarterly visit. He talked about the upcoming Christmas party and how excited he was for it. I decided it was time for some petty revenge. I raised my hand and said, "So just wondering how much we've accumulated this year for the Christmas party from print jobs." He looked so confused and asked me to explain what it meant. So I told him our manager's rule. He got really quiet and said he'd have to review this. The next day, my manager sent an email saying the printing rule was something she was misinformed on and would be abolished immediately. Me, being the little crap disturber I am, hit reply all and asked what would happen to the already accumulated funds. Someone else said we should have a nice healthy fund for a pizza lunch, and everyone agreed. The next day, I heard my manager ordering 10 pizzas for lunch. Also used her own personal credit card to pay for it all. Do I think she was pocketing the printer money all along? Absolutely. But it was fun making her sweat and then having to spend nearly $300 the next day to make up for it. Edit. $30 for a large pizza is very standard where I'm from. I ordered pizza for supper last night, and with tax, tip, and delivery, I paid $36. Our manager ordered us pizza from Boston Pizza, Canadian chain. Google them, and you'll see their prices. The first community response comes from Bready Rocks. A pizza party that was actually worth it. Ha! Dabeen Sprout chimes in, OP is an absolute freaking legend. These are the stories that get me through the workday. Fractera says, I mean, if she was pocketing the print money all along from her employees, that's major theft and she should be fired and prosecuted. What an absolute cow and total BS. I can't believe she was pulling a stunt like that. I'm so glad you caught her. And then called her out on it in the most subtle way. Love that. If she was trying to pull a fast one with the printer, keep her on her toes with the stupid policies. You have the power now. Have you ever caught your boss red-handed like this? What happened? What did you do? Up next, valuable parenting advice. Don't use me to parent your kids. I have dwarfism, and often this leads to weird interactions in public, especially with kids. Sometimes a kid comes up to me to ask why I'm so short, and I have a prepared response for that, but most of the time they just loudly ask their parents why I'm so short. Usually, the parents will awkwardly drag their kids away, telling them not to comment on people in public, which is sad but understandable. I like the parents who just say something about how some people are born like this, and even though we look a bit different, we're still regular people just like everyone else. Sometimes I hear a gem like, I bet she shrank in the wash. What I can't stand is when people try to use me to parent their kids. I'm sure you can think of ways to convince your kids to finish their plate at dinner that don't involve pointing at a dwarf in public and saying, that's what happens when you leave food on your plate, or he didn't listen to his mommy when she told him to eat all his vegetables. It's rude, it's humiliating, and it teaches your kid that differences are a bad thing and that people are at fault for their differences or disabilities. It just pisses me off. A few days ago, I was in public and a kid who was maybe 4 or 5 years old was acting out, and his mom was clearly struggling to keep him under control. So she pointed at me and told her son that I was one of Santa's elves and I was watching him and would tell Santa about his behavior. The kid's name was on a keyring on his backpack, so I just said, it's okay, Hunter, you're already on the nice list, and Santa told me you're getting an iPad for Christmas. Hunter was excited. His mom was not. CJ's opinion comes first. My son asked why a man was so short. All I thought to say was because he wasn't tall. My son accepted that with no questions. Sometimes simplicity is all you need. Groovy Yaya adds, that is awesome. My cousin was definitely of the, hey, people come in all shapes and sizes with her son. But she could not get her 3 or 4-year-old son to stop staring at a guy in a wheelchair when they were standing on a sidewalk. I think waiting for a parade or something. He started to ask questions and my cousin shushed him. And the man said it was okay. At his age, questions were natural and understandable. He was missing a leg. Well, to both of their surprise, he wasn't at all curious about the missing leg because people come in all shapes. He was fascinated by his wheels. Kiddo had been bitten by the all vehicles bug thanks to Grandpa, and I think even asked him if he had gears, etc. When the guy popped a wheelie, my cousin said her kid practically exploded with excitement and she got an immediate request that he wanted a wheelchair too so he could learn to do that. It tickled the guy, thankfully. Bene YVR says, thank you for the parenting advice, taking this on board. I like the parents who just say something about how some people are born like this, and even though we look a bit different, we're still regular people, just like everyone else. I hadn't thought of how to explain this to my daughter yet, but putting this in my mental safe to use should the situation come up. Your quick wit was epic in response to Hunter's mom. Sorry to hear about the derogatory and insulting things people say because of your physique. That is not okay in any way, shape, or form. Yikes. This actually really puts a lot into perspective, and I'm so happy you're telling your story, OP. We don't realize how rude and uneducated people are until we're in situations like this. This is definitely a valuable lesson. Good on you for your sharp and witty response. I'm sorry you have to experience those kinds of interactions with such closed-minded people, OP. You're an absolute rock star for how you handled them. Do you have a similar story? Are you a parent who has done this? Share your thoughts below. And lastly, Terry to the rescue. Block my driveway? I don't know where your car went. This just happened. In fact, I'm still a little pumped of adrenaline. Such a little act, what a rush. So I live on a street connected to an elementary school. Other residences, including myself, have issues on weekdays. Around 3:30 p.m., the parents will be parked all along our street to go pick up their kids from the school at the end of it. There is no problem with that, as I expect it. We have a guy named Terry on our street. Terry had left all the neighbors a business card saying that if any people blocked their driveway, to call him immediately and he would tow them right away. He is basically on standby from 2 to 4 p.m. in our neighborhood. I never had a chance to use this card yet. The only issue for me is that I finish work at 2 p.m. and I go to get groceries and usually end up home around 3:30 p.m. A few times now, I've come home to park in my driveway and there's a vehicle completely blocking me. AKA, instead of parking on the curb, they will park at the end of my driveway and make it unable for me to park in. So I have to ask the owners to move. Today specifically, there was an old Dodge minivan blocking my driveway. When I got out of my car to knock on the tinted window, I realized no one was inside. I thought maybe they are napping in the back while they wait. Well, nope. No one was in the vehicle. I couldn't get into my driveway. This is specifically annoying because the curb behind and in front of him were both vacant. Maybe they weren't vacant when he parked there. So I got the card out of my glove compartment and called Terry. I gave him my house number, and in less than 5 minutes, he had the bad boy towed out of there. So what happened next? I decided to start cleaning my car on my driveway until the owner came by. My first plan was to tell the owner that he or she had blocked the driveway and that I had it towed. But as I was outside cleaning my car, it's 22 degrees outside in November. Don't ask how Canadian weather works. I saw him coming back with my son. He looked incredibly confused as I was cleaning my car. I noticed him and didn't say anything as he was on his phone. So he actually came to me really upset. He said, "Hey pal, have you seen my van? Are you that much of an effing a-hole to call it for a tow when I was gone 3 minutes?" So my plan changed. I said, "Wait, what van?" And I decided to play dumb. Well, about an hour later, he rang my doorbell and asked for details. I told him to F off and came here to write this. Terry is back in his driveway with his tow truck though, and I plan on giving him a 6-pack of beer for helping me. The community responds, "The Admiral goes first." In my experience, police and tow companies don't joke around with this sort of thing. Back in college, I was renting a house with a very steep driveway. One dark and stormy night, I had some friends over. When one guy went to leave, he had to back down the driveway. It turns out our neighbor also had friends over, and one had parked his Mustang right across our driveway. Due to the darkness, rain, steep angle of the driveway, and how low the car was compared to his truck, my friend didn't see it and backed right into the door. We didn't know who owned the car or even which house it was from, so we just called the police to play it safe. They arrived and not only didn't cite my friend, but they ticketed the Mustang. The guy came out when he saw the police lights and moved the car before they needed to call a tow truck. I Dream in Words says, 3 minutes, right. Educational Ebb 7175 responds, 3 minutes is probably about the time that passed from when OP called Terry and when Terry started the tow process. There had to be at least 2 to 3 minutes before that, or OP would have seen Batty McParked leaving their vehicle. And another 2 to 3 minutes after that, or McParked would have watched their vehicle get towed off the street. I'd say 8 to 10 minutes is an absolute minimum, and that's if all stars lined up. Most likely 15 to 30 minutes in the case of bad timing, or 30 to 45 minutes most likely. Parking in front of someone's driveway is never okay. If you're a delivery driver, I'd forgive it because you'll be back driving off within 2 minutes. I'm willing to wait 2 minutes. Anything else though, Terry gets a 6-pack. What is seriously wrong with people? Why would anyone think that it's okay to park and block a driveway? It's actually totally worth being towed by the city as you're not even allowed to do that, 3 minutes or not. And if he does it again, then he'll just be towed again. Find a better parking spot, pal. Would you have done the same and called Terry? Are you a Terry? Tell us your stories. Thank you for joining us today on rLounge. Before you go, be sure to like and subscribe and hit that notification bell. If you have something you want to say regarding today's content, share that with us in the comments below. Until next time.